and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, the idea of establishing a National Institute for Labour Studies dates back to the third National Development Plan, 1975, to 1980, when the federal government of Nigeria took over the Patrick Lumumba Labour Institute and the Trade Union Institute for Economic and Social Development, established by the banned Nigerian Trade Union Congress, NTUC, and the United Labour Congress of Nigeria. Now, the antecedent and rationale behind the establishment of the National Institute for Labour Studies were therefore well enunciated in 1975 National Labour Policy and Plan. The foundation of the institute was laid in Ilorin during the Second Republic by the then civilian president Shehu Shagari on the 4th of May 1983. The federal government recently said it is considering upgrading the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies to a university status. Now, this explains how much impact the institute has made in the country after 40 years of existence. Tonight, we have in the studio some Labour veterans who will be shaping issues from all fronts concerning the long walk to the Labour Institute. But before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report from our correspondent, Abdul Hafiz Alaya.
In May 1983, Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies has been in the forefront of building the capacity of workers, employers, and government officials in labour and industrial relations. The foremost labour institution in Nigeria, whose foundation was laid by the then President Shehu Shagari, was a product of the Third National Development Plan and has since been living up to its mandate against all odds. From the time of the pioneer Director General of Minals, Aremu Olariwaju Sukumbi, to the current DG, Issa Aremu, the institute has witnessed a lot of transformations in both infrastructure and courses outputs.
Run programs with participation of not less than 100,000 workers, as well as other participants in the last 40 years. And the whole idea is that we build capacity, or now they can handle grievances at work. We've built capacity in a way that workers will be able to know their rights in the workplaces. They are conscious of occupational health and safety. They also see the need for productivity, the need for discipline in the world of work.
The ministry has directed that all elected labor union leaders must undergo compulsory training. If not, they will not be recognized by government. And that is the way try to make the institute very relevant as far as the mandate is concerned, and a way trying to provide a platform for an enlightened industrial relations in Nigeria.
Operating under tripartite arrangements, the institute has trained thousands of people from both public and private sectors in labor and other related studies. Hence, rolling out the drums after 40 years of excellent service is not out of place. Though the world of work is changing all over the world, evolving labor education that promotes adaptation to technological innovations, global economy, and demographic dynamisms is expected to be the focus of Minals. Things to stakeholders will make the Institute's vision of becoming a hub for labour studies in West Africa a reality in the nearest future.
Health and safety, compensation, the number of persons, gender policy, the impact of the work climate, because that's the road to the future.
They need to change along with time. You need capacity building, and this is why institute like this is very important. But I'm glad that they have the potential to serve that purpose.
Means it has been instrumental to the kind of peaceful and harmonious relationship between workers and employers.
Minals has contributed immensely to the development of the labor practice in Nigeria.
The 40th anniversary of Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies is no doubt a watershed celebration, which stakeholders believe will spur the institute to break new grounds in industrial relations and labour studies in Nigeria and beyond.
Right, that sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Comrade Isa Aremu MNI. He is the Director General CEO of the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies. Thanks for being with us here tonight.
Mr. Good evening, and good evening to all our numerous viewers.
All right. We're also joined tonight by Dr. Aminu Abdullahi Isiaku, who is Head of Department of Geology and Mining, University of Abuja, and the National Liaison Officer, Congress of University Academics, Konua. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you again, Cyril. Thank you, viewers.
Let me also introduce Comrade Martin Ebanubi, General Secretary, Nigerian Union of Allied Health Professionals. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And joining us via Zoom is Mr. Adewale Smart Oyewinde. He is Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA. He joins us via Zoom. Thanks for being with us. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks, sir.
And also with us tonight is Comrade Abiodun Aremu. He is Secretary, Joint Action Front and Coordinator, Amilcar Cabral Ideological School Movement. He also joins us via Zoom. All right. At some point in time, we'll... Okay. Okay. There he is. Thank you for being with us tonight. All right. Okay. Well, at some point, as we always say, this program will be interactive. It means you can get to join in the discussion in the studio, but when we get to that period, we'll remind you of the procedures and the processes. But for now, let's go straight into this discussion. It's all about the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies at 40. And we have here the DGCU, Comrade Isa Aremu. Comrade, take us through this 40 years of this institute. What's the significance of this 40th anniversary when you look at what the institute is meant to do and how it's been relevant to the working class?
Well, once again, Cyril, let me, through you, convey anniversary greetings to all our viewers and of course my co-panelists who you have really introduced them. I think the background picture and the story that you showed had already explained why we are here to celebrate Minals at 40. It's celebration of institution building. Often, we underrate the progress we are making in Africa and in Nigeria, particularly by institution building. You know the cliche that we are being told that Africans should build institutions. I think those who say so, maybe they don't know we're already building institutions. Cyril, you know the story of NTA is one success story that has come out of Africa. I'm very sure that from 1977, you've been broadcasting as the largest network that we have in the continent of Africa. So I think it's time for us to showcase progress we're making about institution building. I also know that National Youth Service Corps, NYC, is marking its 50th anniversary. So I think for us at Minals, it's also to celebrate institution building in Africa. And as you said in your background tape, Minals, that's Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies, is a product of the third National Development Plan. There was once in Nigeria that was driven by development plan. We had the first development, second development plan. The third development plan from 1975 to 1980 taught it wise that labor is an important partner in national building. and that you need to nurture labor, you need to motivate labor. Above all, you need to educate the workforce, which is the greatest human resource, that God gives any country. And in doing so, it was thought that there should be an institute that will be able to build capacity building for the workers and their organization containing the trade unions. Not only that, including employers of labor and government officials on core labor issues, labor market issues, on how to handle grievances in the world of work, how to promote negotiation, because everybody knows that the world of work is inherently could be conflictual at times. Conflict, disputes are inevitable. It's how you handle this crisis arising from the world of work, and that can be done through mediation, negotiation, collective bargaining, but you need special skills along that line. So Minals was commissioned in 1983 by the late President Shehu Shagari. Again, I was a democratic Nigeria, and for me, as somebody who believes in democratic process, I'm happy that we are celebrating 40th at the time, 40th anniversary of this institution. At the time, Nigeria was, engaged in democratic process. So it's also, you can say, this dividend of democracy. So we are establishing this institution building. In 1992, originally it was known as National Institute for Labor Studies. But in 1992, the then military president, General Ibrahim Babangida, graciously, to honor the labor movement, on a May Day, renamed the institute after number one labor leader, our own Michael Imudu. And I can pick it from your background that is a legitimate honor for Michael Imudu, because well before 1983, well before restructuring of the unions, even trade unions have seen the need for trade union education. And they built their own, particularly mobile institute you mentioned for trade. So this like legitimizing the aspiration of the founding fathers and mothers of trade union movement. Then quickly, we're also celebrating corporate governance. What I mean about that is the celebration of what I call tripartism, because our institute has a unique governing council. It's modeled along the International Labour Training Center in Turin of the ILO, the arm of ILO, International Labour Organization. And the idea is that our governing structure is made up of organized labor, in this case represented by Nigerian Labour Congress. We have two representatives on our governing board, one male and one female. I think part of the gender sensitivity that we done. Then we have Nigerian Employer Consultative Association, who also has two representatives on our board. Then of course we have government officials, Ministry of Labour. We also have the police, the army, security forces who serve on the board. So what I'm saying is that for us to have nurtured these institutions from 1983 to 2023, celebration of institution building, corporate governance, and lastly, a celebration of labor education, uninterrupted, and celebration of, the effort and productivity of the workforce, of that great institute. We have pool of trainers now that are reputable, that over the years have now made our institute to be the regional center for labor education in Africa, in West Africa in particular. And International Labour Organization has partnered with us. Again, it's also a celebration of partnership. So I think as we go by, we'll be able to itemize what we have achieved. But over the years, we've taught tens of thousands, of workforce, both formal and informal sector. But if you also look at the landscape, sorry, for a potential workforce of 52 million, is the largest concentration of workforce in Africa, formal and informal sector. That Minals just started, with this number. So this is also an opportunity to reset our agenda, to make sure that in the next 40 years, we cover millions of workers in terms of labor education and promote industrial harmony and productivity in the world of work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, let's go to Dr. Aminu Abdullahi Isiaku. Well, you're an academic with the, should we say, fledgling Kunua, because it's young. Only recently Kunua came on board. Situate for us, if you will, the significance of adequate education when it comes to labor issues for workers, both in the public and private sectors. Why it's extremely important.
Thank you very much, Cyril, for this question. For us in Konwa, this is a very significant time that we are coming on board the labor, the trade union industry in Nigeria at a time when institutions like Minals are celebrating 40 years. For us, 40 years, even in the life of a human being, it's a very mature age. So we can say Minals is a very now matured institution, so to say. And the coming of Konwa at this particular point in time signifies that even if institutions are maturing, even if institutions or when institutions have matured, they can still cater for the needs of younger institutions like Konwa now coming on board. And that need is very significant for Nigeria, very significant for the labor movement, the right of workers, even the right of employers, so to say. So it's a very significant time that we are coming, and we strongly identify ourselves with the successes that Minals have recorded over the years, and especially the tremendous success that Minals have recovered in the last few years, probably in the life of this administration, where is what we can quickly remember as a clear evidence of investment and commitment of government to actually develop the capacity of not only workers but employers of labor, as well as even government officials that have the responsibility of dispensing labor policy for the country.
Well, we'll just take up from the point of capacity building that you talked about as we go over to Comrade Martin Egbanubi. It's been a long walk, as we said, from the early stages of the concept of having an institute for labor studies to where we are now. And last speaker just talked about capacity building and how relevant it is. Trade unionism has changed over time, it has evolved, and we have seen from the early stages of what necessarily was a conflictual relationship between employers and employees to the stages where collective bargaining was introduced and tripartism became it. So for one in organized labor, the question of capacity building, when you look at it in contemporary times, how aware of the processes of negotiation and rights of workers is the average worker today?
Thank you so much, Siri, and once again, it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to congratulate our foremost Labour Institute, named after Labour leader number 1, Michael Imodu National for Labour Studies, for this occasion of 40th anniversary. It's a long year, and for all the contributions the institutes have made so far in terms of capacity building, I think is highly commendable. And I want to congratulate our Comrade DG, the first trade unionist to head that institution. I think to us in the trade union movement is commendable, and we appreciated the federal government under the President Muhammadu Buhari's leadership for appointing one of us to lead that foremost Labour Institute. Having said that, the issue of capacity building is very critical in the life of every trade unionist. And of course, for you to be a trade unionist, you must first be a worker. Because the ILO Convention 87 that has conferred on every worker to have the right of association. Specifically mention worker. So it means that if you are not a worker, you cannot be a trade unionist. So it's a background. And so the institute has a mandate to provide workers education generally to build the capacity of Nigerian workers in terms of ensuring that there is productivity, ensuring that the workplace is peaceful, and also empowering the employers to ensure that a safe workplace is provided for every actor within the workplace to also discharge their duties without any form of injuries or any form of inhibition. Let me put it in that way. So the institute has really fared well in terms of providing that in their capacity. A lot of trade union leaders today are living and dead are passed through the institute in terms of gaining the needed knowledge and providing the quality leadership that is required in labor administration, trade union administration, and also in the larger society, because the roles of trade union really transcend beyond the workplace. There are economic issues that trade union also intervene in. So you need a broader knowledge to have a grasp of the economic issues, to be able to engage the ruling class, and also to be able to engage even the larger society in terms of providing the needed intervention, because trade union intervene in a series of issues, economic and political. The democracy we enjoy today, the history cannot be completed without the mention of the trade union movement, and of course the labor movement in general, which encompasses the civil society. So the trade union movement has really benefited so much from the institute, and based on the historical perspective advanced by Comrade Remu with respect to the first efforts by the trade union movement to come up with the Lumumba Labour Institute, and by the third national development plan of the then Muritala Obasanjo administration to come up with a template to have a national labor institute which is tripartite in nature, to represent the interests of the employer, the government, and of course the workers and their representatives. So the issue of capacity building is key. We are in a knowledge society today, and even the trade union movement internationally today invests so much in knowledge, and that is why International Labour Organization has also its training institute in Turin, Italy, to also provide the needed capacity building for workers and their representatives across the spectrum of the trade union movement. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. Well, let's go over to NECA and speak with Mr. Oyerinde, who is the Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA, who joins us via Zoom. Yes, well, you are one leg of the tripod that we refer to here, NECA, representing the employers. We have the organized labor, the workers, and government as the third leg. Now you one leg, and you sit on the council of the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies. From the viewpoint of a representative of the employers, let's hear you on the significance of this institute when we talk about education on labor issues and labor matters and promoting industrial harmony.
Thank you very much, Cyril, and let me join others to congratulate the DG of Minals, the chairman of the board, and everyone that is associated with Minals for 40 long years of impact. For us as employers, one of the key issues that you can't take away that drives growth, both at the enterprise level and also at the national level, is industrial harmony, as you mentioned it. And for us, as part of Minals, we have come to realize, understand that the rate at which the workplace is evolving, the rate at which knowledge is evolving, the rate at which industrial relation practices is evolving globally, somehow our willingness to learn and to meet up with those changes is not very commendable. And that is one of the gaps that we think Minals should bridge, or has been bridging, within the context of capacity building for not only workers but employers and government also, and also delving to the realm of research, which is a major issue in this environment. So while it has played a significant role in building capacity for industrial harmony, which will ordinarily lead to national development, we believe also that within the context of its limitation, the institute has done well. I said limitation within the context of what we have in Zimbabwe. We have ALAC in Zimbabwe, that's African Regional Center for Labor Studies. We have the ITC-ILO that was earlier mentioned in Turin. We believe strongly that women's building is capacity, to the realm of those institutes that we just mentioned, will not only serve the employers or labor, as it were, but will also serve our nation as a whole. So fundamentally, the institute is positioned to play a more critical role within the context of education, labor education, not only for employers or employees, but also within the context of all of us that are either directly or indirectly related to the marketplace. So far so good. A lot of ground for improvement, a lot of opportunities for improvement, and a lot of opportunities also for collaboration. We have not scratched the surface of labor education in this country. There is still a lot that we need to learn. There is still a lot that we need to glean from the global community, and there is still a lot that we can collaborate with others to build our own capacity as social partners and the tripartite in Nigeria. So far so good, but there's quite a lot of room for improvement.
All right, thank you so much for your contributions. At this point, we'll link up with Comrade Abiodun Aremu. He is Secretary, Joint Action Front, Coordinator, Amilcar Cabral Ideological School Movement. He also joins us via Zoom. I want to believe that Comrade Abiodun Aremu is right there, and he can hear me quite clearly.
Yes. Thank you, Steven. I hope the network will allow you and the viewers at home to have my intervention, because it's been epileptic on and off.
Okay.
Let me join others to congratulate Mills for the 40th anniversary, and also use the occasions to remember Labour leader number 1, NAO Ibodu. It's significant that we have a mill. It's also significant that what constitutes mill also represents a legacy of the labor movement, because the Patrice Lumumba Academy that also informed an antecedent in the creations of mills must also remember for the independence of the unions themselves. And for the unions, capacity building is very, very important. Yeah, we should all.
Oh dear. Well, he had expressed fears that the technical quality.
I was saying that we can also celebrate that we have committed Issa removing the first representatives of the workers are in Minals. And what I expect, or what we expect directly from Minals is the challenges of how you want to develop this industrial harmony between the workers, the employers, and the government. So that just beyond the training, how are some of the issues at the level of industrial relation practices reflecting in the negotiation process? It's important because if you have a worker institute where it's possible for the three parties to relate, it should also be possible that when there are issues of industrial relations, particularly the parties that always default in agreement, should also be made to learn some lessons. Secondly, because we really have to move forward, and I'm happy we have people like Issa Remu there, who has also gone through the rudiments of trade union practices. Why are some of these issues not contentious issues that can be resolved at the table level? In case where you have strikes endure, these are challenges that we have to take very seriously. So that school is not just for school. School must be seen in the context of what it brings out. Mm-hmm. And for the workers, I think we have a lot to bring to the table in the discussions, in trade union educations, and other level of interactions that take place at the institute. And I'm sure having a worker representative to be able to bring that to the fore, so that workers that have opportunity of participating in meals, because I was there, and some of the graduates, and they are all happy to be graduates at the place. But we want to also see that reflect at the level of their conduct, at the level of their practices, normal engagement to the benefit of the working people in the country. So there is still opportunity for me to grow and develop further, but I feel there can also be engagement to also look at what we are missing in meals. What are factors that make the parties member academy a major pillar in workers' education when you don't have this kind of institutionalizations? Mm-hmm. These are all areas that can be looked into, which will also inform curriculum revitalizations and other level of exchanges. Those are just the input I want to make for now.
Okay, thank you so much. You raised a very key issue here, and of course you must have heard him when he spoke about your background, and you have come from the core, industrial union. You come from industry where initially it was a huge, massive struggle between employers and employees for better working conditions. Now, as the DG and CEO of an institute for labor studies which aims at building the capacity of workers and also of employers, how would you say you've carried out this mandate, and what are the key successes that you've been able to achieve?
Well, thanks so much, Cyril. I think part of the success stories have also been told by my co-panelists, who have been to the institute. The two unions that are here, their unions have come for training programs. We can also list other unions who have come over the years. If I want to say, since I came in, and interestingly, I'm also marking my second year anniversary in office. I was appointed by President Muhammad Buhari in May 2021, on the recommendation of
of our supervisory minister, Mr. Festus Keyamo, SAN, and of course, the other minister too. I mean, they are in support of the nomination. So you can also see that we are celebrating national leadership today.
Right.
Since for the past 40 years, we've gotten 8 governing councils. Of course, we've also had 5 DGs, CEOs, and as has been said, I'm the first to come from trade union movement. Again, this celebration of governance over the years, and I think we have to underscore this point, because when people say that we are bad governance, I think some of the comments we make, they are not backed up with facts. You know, it is the government that through the Third National Development Plan thought there was need to have a labor institute. Just like you had similar institutions like ASCON, Administrative Staff College, for top bureaucrats, top civil servants, you know, in Badagry. Just like you have CMD, Center for Management Studies, government also thought that labor matters. Labor creates wealth. Labor also need nurturing through education. For me, this is a sign of good governance. And for President Muhammadu Buhari to break the genes to say, coming from trade union movement, with my profile, I need to head the institute. I think that shows level of, you know, appreciation of the importance of the labor movement. I saw some of the tapes, some of the pictures you've shown. This is an institute that started from a temporary premises in 1983. Today, you can see an institute that is comparable to similar institutes worldwide. The access road, it's so welcoming. It's part of the initiative we brought in when I came in. And we thought of public partnership. You know, that access beautiful you showed is a sign of the engagement we had with Federal Ministry of Labour. Let me use this opportunity Federal Ministry of Works. I would like to appreciate Minister Babatunde Fashola, you know, who gave us that support. Then we now have auditorium that has a capacity of 1,000 plus. I think that's where we did our anniversary lecture, in which we look at labor education for the past 40 years. It has a capacity of taking 1,000. Okay, so we have hostels, you know, that has a capacity of taking almost close to 200 participants now. So it takes support of the government over the years for giving us budget within limited resources. And what have we also achieved? For the first time, Nigerian Labour Congress domesticated, or is now domesticating, let me put it that way, for the past 2 years. I'll be having a Samatan school, you know, in Ilorin, because I came on board. You know, I had to convince them that this is now the time to have practical ownership of an institute that belongs to them. We've also gotten a lot of unions now that have keyed in, both in formal and informal sectors. The ministry has also made it, you know, very, very significant now for the unions that after you finish your delegate conference, the new executives should go for a kind of induction course. I want to put it that way. And now I was also thinking of it too, that I think we've discussed that at our governing council level, not just labor that needs induction. I've been watching very good initiative that has been taken now to sensitize the newly elected governors, you know, newly elected senators, representatives. I think they also need a kind of orientation on how to engage with the labor movement. You know, they must see labor as an asset for national development. They must see labor not as a cost item. You know, you don't need to downsize, you need to right size, but you need to nurture labor to get the best out of the trade unions. And this can only be done if we also build some level of understanding, capacity building for these governors. We are going to engage the Governors Forum. We are going to, through the Legislative Institute, also engage the reps. So We've also diversified our courses. We used to run normal regular programs, annual calendar, through our calendar on core labor issues that have itemized collective bargaining, negotiation, occupational health and safety for 1 week, 2 weeks as the case may be. We call it implant. We can also do specialized programs for different employers of labor. But now we've also diversified because the world of work is changing, as some of the panelists have said. Young workers, we need to catch them young. We run diploma now in labor studies, in industrial relations. We also run BSc in industrial relations, in partnership with some universities, namely University of Ilorin, and accredited by JAM, as well as Lagos State University. In fact, that's the new one we form. So that also tells you, that's what really gives the inspiration that we can really upgrade the institute to become possibly a university much more later. So what I'm saying in summary is that what have we brought on board? All stakeholders have now more than ever before got a sense of ownership of the institute, and I'm happy to see NECA representative and also our trade unions who are also here to do so. And we're also setting an agenda for the future. What I want to quickly wrap up here is that we are going to use the 40th anniversary to also make a case for sustainable policy, on labor education, and this is important. Federal Ministry of Labor, this is the oldest ministry that we have in the country, has done very well to work out series of policy. We have policy on productivity, we have policy on occupational health and safety, we have policy on child labor. We can go on and on, but the key to drive and popularize these policies is knowledge, through those labor issues. And this way, Michael Imudu can come in over that one. So, but on the whole, it's celebration of governance, as I've said, and the two honorable ministers have been very, very supportive to reposition the institute. And I want to challenge the incoming administration, to make sure that labor market institutions, are well resourced, are well supported. I mean, Minals is only one of them. You have productivity center, you have industrial arbitration panel, you have, of course, Minals, which I represent very well. You can't ensure peaceful development without workplaces that are just and have fair returns for the working people. And that can only be done through consistent education.
Something you said which I'd like to just spend a little more time on, and the question of organizing some orientation for newly elected officials. Now, this is key. We have an incoming administration, and well, there's no, I mean, this is quite clear. The industrial climate has been highly charged.
Absolutely.
In the country. You have cases where strikes are, probably monthly in some areas, with some strikes lasting as long as 8 months. In fact, Konoha was a product of a prolonged strike in tertiary institutions. Now you have some governors who are still there. You have some governors who are newly elected. And so many of the issues that led to those incessant strikes are still right there unresolved. You have mentioned that you're looking at engaging these newly elected officials, both at the Senate, the House of Reps, and even the various government houses, on how to pursue industrial harmony, respect for workers' rights and obligations of workers to their employers. What is the way out of this perennial fight? Yes, it has to go on. They say living is conflictual at all stages. But in the case of Nigeria, even as we speak, there is a warning strike by one of the health affiliates going on right at this moment.
Yeah, so I think I'm happy that you want us to throw light on this new initiative of engaging newly elected governors as well as legislators. Certainly, I agree with you that we've gotten a series of industrial disputes going on. In fact, the Ministry of Labor has handled, apprehended, and resolved close to 500 industrial disputes since 2015. That's the benchmark. But see, this dispute could get more than this without mediation, negotiation, and of course capacity building that we have been carrying out in the labor movement. You know my background, I came from textile union, and as at the time I left that place, we signed 45 national collective agreements without single shutdown of the industry as a whole. And this is an industry which used to be led by Comrade Adams Oshomole. You know, that's the tradition we are used to through negotiation, you know, compromises, you know, defend the interests of workers, but without running that industry. This couldn't have been made possible if we also don't train our workers over the years to know the procedures on how to handle grievances. You know, textile industry used to be very turbulent, highly labor intensive, but what sustained the industry was the need for proper education, and we follow the process of mediation, negotiation in case there are disputes. So what I want to say here is that they also benefited textile. When I was there, we used to patronize Michael Imodu Labour Institute, so it has really worked very well. Now back to the point you are raising about how we did the new government cope with this challenge, is that I think first they must consolidate on some of the things that have been put in place here. First, we must allow for freedom of association, ensure trade union right, the right to freely negotiate, to bargain. So don't see unions as necessarily obstacle. And that requires an open mind on the part of employers. But there must also be reciprocity on the part of the organized labor to know that we're all partners, you know, to run the enterprise, to make the place work very well. Then the second one is also to do a lot of more engagement, social dialogue. You know, the first reaction is not for you to say you want to lock out workers who are protesting. You know, so also the first reaction of unions cannot be you are going on strike immediately. I think we need to negotiate, we need to discuss very well. Extremely, very, very significant. Then the last 2 points that I thought I should raise is that we must know the reality now that there's virtual collapse of income, wages. In fact, people talk of working poor, you know, and you can't do so much sermon to people who are hungry and who are hungry, you know. And I think this is where I want to appreciate President Muhammad Buhari, that in spite of the economic crisis that he went through, COVID-19, recession 1 and 2, when Labour pushed for improvement on minimum wage in 2017, federal government went to negotiation, and the two ministers facilitated that of Labour, such that we now raise minimum wage to 30,000. But we need to go beyond that now, and there is need for living wage, because you also know that this what has been paid has been eroded with inflation, microeconomic instability, and co. But I'm excited that the new president-elect is in his campaign. He made the point that he will pay living wage. He will subscribe to social dialogue. Now, the challenge is for the governors to make those commitments, you know, and this can only be done if there is direct engagement with the organized labor. And when I say living wage, there must also be living productivity. You know, what is given must also be paid back by the working people. And honestly speaking, we always talk of China, you know, as fastest growing developing country. I'm not sure whether you can use China is developing. The greatest resource of China is human resource. Now, what is China doing to maintain that huge labor force? You know, avoid unnecessary disruption. Today, China has uplifted millions out of poverty. You know, it's through dialogue with the workers. They may not have freedom of association the way we talk of it in Nigeria, but the bottom line is that in return or improvement in productivity, workers are well motivated. And I'm similar at China because that's the possible model that Nigeria should be able to follow. So I have no doubt in my mind that if we close knowledge gap, the newly elected governor have to know from day one that labor is an asset. I could recollect the governors when they first of all came. We know they resisted payment of the new minimum wage. In fact, President Buhari at the point, had to tell them, do some of you sleep when you don't pay this salary. So from day one, I think they need the engagement to do. Labor will be an asset. But there are some states that are also paying. Yes. And that's why there are some states that are paying. Lagos, for instance, very well. Edo, if you pay beyond the normal minimum wage, Kwara State, they pay. As many as 5 months. But that's completely wrong. And I think that's why the labor has to do the engagement. But we as an institute, we have to really facilitate knowledge gap to know that if you don't reward working people very well, you are going to deal with dispute, which you cannot afford.
You see, this is what brings the challenge. This is the challenge for me as I come to Dr. Abdullahi Isiaku. This is the challenge here, where administrations do not see government as a continuum. And one of the biggest issues that's led to industrial unrest is you engage in a negotiation, you sign agreements, and another administration comes and says, look, we didn't sign those agreements, so we cannot be held accountable for that. Now, how do you, as now you're looking at another administration coming into office, what is the best way out to set the tone for what should be? Otherwise, all these issues are going to be carried forward, and there would seem to be no headway.
Thank you, Cyril. For us, the solution that we have prescribed to this is increased mutual engagement. Almost to the point of restarting engagement on a clean slate with no pre-existing conditions. That was us when we were in the former union, where leaders negotiated with a previous administration, and then that agreement was never fully implemented, and it's been carried over now to this administration, who now sees it more like a liability and then couldn't implement it in its entirety. So that led to all the hostilities that you've seen. So on one hand, you can say it was the fault of successive administrations for not honoring agreements signed with unions. However, on the other hand, you can also share some blame with the way unions handle agreements. It is a mark of knowledge. It is a mark of educated people to solve challenges as they come. The question could have been, how now do we engage with an administration that has failed to honor agreement? It's a very difficult question. But we in Cornwall do not believe that the answer to that is rock the boat, sink it. There has to be the institutions where we are working first to exist before we can exist as workers, before we can exist as a trade union. Without the institutions, without the universities in existence, we will not be relevant, we will not exist at all. So the notion that the solution to apply to a government that does not honor agreements is to go on strike such that even the operational capacity of the universities will now be made to be very low. Before, they used to operate on a certain level of capacity. Vis-a-vis the instruments they have, the infrastructure, and then the poor wages that everybody now knows that Nigerian university lecturers are suffering from. So issues of pay, pension, improved working conditions, health and safety conditions, and all that should have been tackled in a much different way by engaging government at all levels. So the failed strategy by the former union which we belong to was engage with the executive arm of government alone. If they fail to honor agreement with us, we sink the boat, including the students and everybody. And we say no to that. That was why we left, because we couldn't contribute anything meaningful to the discussion because of lack of opportunity. And now we are bringing on board new ideas that government is quite big. Federal government consists of the executive arm and the legislative arm. What we don't see happening over the years is continuous and mutual respect and engagement with the legislative arm. And that's really where the budget is. If we had a dedicated team, which Konwa now is forming, that will engage mutually with due respect to the members of the National Assembly, so that they can put in more budget for education, put in more funding into the system to cater for the welfare. And what Minals has done for us as a beneficiary, quite recently we got involved in training at Minals, courtesy of the privilege that we got and the opportunity given to us by the Honorable Minister for Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige. That says immediately after our inauguration and after our NEC, we have to proceed to Minals so that we can start off on an informed foundation, and we found that really rewarding.
Okay. Speaking of a good foundation, let me ask Comrade Martin this one. How do you assess today's labor leader? I mean, I'll put the other side of this question to the NECA DG, but for you, how do you assess today's labor leader as against what employers in the past would say? Because we're saying here about developing capacity, education, and being able to devise other means to promote industrial harmony. Would you say today's labor leader has grasped the essence of the change that has rapidly taken place?
Thank you so much, Siri. Yes, in our contemporary times, a lot of changes in the work pattern, dynamics of engagement, rules of engagement. I think our labor leaders, by virtue of exposure, which we can attest to through the capacity of our Comrade DG, have had a lot of training within and outside the country. They have a wider knowledge of traditional practices and the rules of engagement. I think the issue here now is that we must also look at our own society. There are a lot of peculiarities. Yes, we need what we call international best practices in our approach in order to sustain industrial harmony. But there's something that is critical. Just like people say you cannot beat a child and you say the child should not cry. The government also must be responsible in terms of the rules of engagement. The issue of reciprocity is also very important. One, the issue of strike. Yes, trade unions have the right to strike by virtue of Convention 87 on the ILO. Okay? But it's the last instrument to use. And there is usually a notice of strike, which at times government don't react until the strike is on. So, and I think we need to strike a balance on this. So I don't still believe that the contemporary labor leaders are not really informed about the rules of engagement, but there are a lot of imbalances in terms of engagement. The responsibility of the employer, especially when it comes to government, to honor agreement. I mean, and there is something I always emphasize: the representative of government in negotiation. They must have the mandates to sign agreements, because just like the ASU case, since 2001, I've been following ASU issue of a collective agreement, where at times they say they sign under duress, and I mean, there must be will to even go into any negotiation from both parties. the representation must be that the two parties must have the mandate to sign agreement on behalf of the people they represent. And so that is very key in order to minimize some of these industrial crises here and there. And I want to say, just like already mentioned, it's just social dialogue. One of the key components of social dialogue is exchange of information and regular consultation as advanced by the International Labour Organization. There are a lot of hidden information. There are a lot of things that are not also made known to the workers. Okay. Government at that will say, oh, we have economic crisis, we have this, we have that, but they don't come out plain about the facts. Present your facts, okay, and let the other party say the facts. Because we see a situation whereby even after every administration, we have billions of naira that have been stolen from the coffers of government. Of course, the same government that will say they don't have money to pay this, they don't have money to do that, but you still see such kind of financial recklessness happening. So there must be facts presented. I mean, let's workers represent the trade unions also have, but then regular consultation, which is the key component of social dialogue. There must be regular, let us discuss. The Wisdom Justice said it is better to judge than to war. Because for every war, you see come to a round table to resolve. So I don't think war situation, I mean, just to have a showdown is what we need. But there must be regular consultation. Government employer must be open to regular consultation.
All right, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll be asking the DG of Minals to let us into his next line of action to develop not just the institute, but the workers, those who are able to benefit from the mandate of Minals on both sides, the employers, the workers, and particularly the government. Stay with us, we'll be back shortly.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. We're at that segment now where you can join in the conversation in the studio. The numbers will be on your screens, and you can take advantage of those numbers and call in. And we say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in tonight and your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we always encourage you to go straight to the point, not to bother too much about the greetings. A simple hello would do. Tonight, it's 40 years of the Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies. We have here the DG CEO of the Institute. We've been talking about developing the capacity of not just the workers, but employers as well. And we also have other affiliates who are with us tonight. So if you keep those calls coming through, and whatever issues you raise, our guests tonight will be only too willing to address them. Let's go straight to the DG NECA. We said we were going to ask him the other side of this question. We'd asked for an assessment of today's labor leader. Let us look at the employer. and where the employer is coming from, and the old notion that the worker is always trying to create demand impossible conditions from the employer, and that the employer is always exploiting the worker. And how can this be corrected? How can the mindset change? Because if you have two sides who view one another with suspicion, then you begin to lay the grounds for disharmony. How can education and capacity building address this matter? DG NECA, that's Mr. Adewale Smart Oyerinde. We'll go later on to Comrade Abiodun Aremu, but let's go to the DG NECA first, right now.
I think fundamentally, we can't run away from education. We can't run away from continuous education. We can't run away from education again. And this is the point I'm trying to make. One of the things we preach at the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association is responsible enterprises. The need for enterprises, for businesses to be responsible not only to government within the context of meeting their regulatory obligations, in the context of tax, in the context of social corporate social responsibilities, not also only to being responsible to their shareholders, but also being responsible to their obligations to workers, to employees. So this is one mantra that we have preached and we continue to preach. But within the context of this conversation, there will always be conflict arising from misunderstanding of intentions and intent, and also misunderstanding of positions, as it were. And we can bridge all this misconception, misinterpretation of intent and intention through one of the key principles of the ILO that one of the speakers have said, that is social dialogue. You know, I was fortunate to attend the ILO governing board meeting in March. I was appointed a member of the governing board in March. And the beauty of social dialogue came to play during that very, very important meeting. You know, you can see the negotiation, the engagement between workers, between employers at that global level and government, and very, very knotty issues that could have put the ILO in a very difficult situation being resolved through social dialogue. So for us, we still have to go back to the concept of education. The workers need continuous education. The employers need continuous education. We all need to go back and understand even the roles of the institutions that we have set for ourselves. Because if there are conflicts, we have the Industrial Arbitration Panel. It has its role in conflict resolution. We have our legal framework, the Trade Dispute Act, that has also created frameworks for us to resolve disputes when they arise. So it's all boiled down to understanding those institutions and the roles those institutions are to play in resolving crises that will definitely arise in the workplace. Lastly for me is this: beyond the issues of labor and industrial relations that we have enumerated, I think it's also important for all of us, both employers and workers, to also deepen our knowledge about economics, deepen our knowledge about what is happening in the economy, how international global variables affect our economy, and how decisions, government policies, government regulations, how they stifle or how they enhance the growth of the enterprises. Because the reality is this: if a government policy creates disruption in the local economy and businesses cannot or are struggling to be sustainable, not competitive now. They are struggling to be sustainable. Invariably, the capacity of that enterprise to survive will be impinged by that policy, and its capacity to meet certain obligations will also be affected. Now, if those capacities are affected, I will come back to what one of the panelists have also mentioned, is the issue of transparency. We have told employers, look, you can negotiate agreements. If your capacity to meet those agreements or to fulfill those obligations has been impinged by factors out of your control, you can still call back those that you have negotiated with. So look, the agreement we negotiated in January, by certain factors beyond our control, we cannot meet that obligation. Now, let us renegotiate. There's always provision to negotiate and to renegotiate agreements. And that is what we are preaching, that is what we have encouraged our members, that as far as possible, as much as possible, demonstrate a very high level of responsibility, not only to stakeholders, not only to shareholders, but also to those that you call your employees. We believe strongly that labor is not a commodity, as the ILO have said. And being a very strong member of the ILO family, we believe that every worker must receive not only the minimum wage, not only the salary, not only a take-home pay, but they must receive a living wage. And we can all achieve this through continuous education of the processes of social dialogue, continuous education about processes and principles of negotiation, continuous education about the economy itself. Because once we understand what the economy is saying, once we understand the challenges that is faced by enterprises, then it becomes easier for us to align, for us to make compromises, and for us to all contribute not only to the growth of the economy, but to the growth of the national economy as it was. So for me, we cannot run away from continuous education, both from the employers and both from the employee side, and also from the government side, most especially.
Okay, so now we can bring in Comrade Abiodun Aremu, and I'm sure he's been following the conversation thus far, and he would have his own point to chip in here at this point.
Yeah, I think for the workers, the most important challenge is to use the institute, the opportunity of the institute to deepen engagement on issues of capacity building on how to enforce, you see, their basic demands. Just take the issue of the recent ASU strike that was resolved one way or the other. You see, when government unilaterally, you see, undermines collective bargaining, you see, and use things like fiat or force. Because if you look at these various issues, workers are the ones that are affected. And government, through another ways, bring a section of that same workers on a dialogue level. You see, these are the critical issues. You see, and that's why for workers, when you have a school like the Minals, is an opportunity to use the opportunity of that school to deepen debates, to deepen the discussions on issues that affect you. You see, because once a polity is funded on exploitations, there cannot be harmony, there cannot be so-called industrial harmony. We can only coexist, you see, and pretend to patch up things. Because interests are in conflict. And tripartite is two and it's not equal. Yeah, it appears equal in the form of tripartite, but it's not equal. And I think the workers should see the institutions as an institutions, you see, to deepen their own issues, so that what kind of educations are to be given, what are the education that relates to you, you see, as to be able to realize the maximum of your benefit in every dialogue process. And I think that's where the challenge of workers lies.
Okay.
so that in addition to whatever they will get as means, workers must see education beyond the means, in terms of what they cannot realize under means. Because for workers, it's a permanent struggle, and a struggle in which you are already disadvantaged, you see, in choices, in demands, and some other things. Workers must be in a position to be able to address that. Because more so in this area of the new world of work, many workers lost their job in the process of COVID and others. Yes, it's not just speaking on the government side to say, okay, you are a government employee. There are several workers that are not under government employee. There are several workers that are not unionized. These are challenges that workers themselves must bring to the table. You see, must think ahead before coming, be proactive. You see, and get the opportunity of the ministry, you see, to further develop themselves, develop their issues, you see, and deepen the debate. I think it's not more from the proactive. So it should be still a school of engagement, a school to promote their issues, a school to argue their issues, a school to deepen alternative. Because government will now come, fuel subsidy, you are doing subsidies, without allowing serious debate. So that is where entry like the Model Institute should be avenue where workers that are being sent, you see, to schools, you see, are workers that will go there, not just on what they are taught, but on questioning what they are taught. So that it's not just a school where they say A is A. You see, why is A? You can't just personalize it. Because as long as you exist in the context of exploitative relationship.
Okay. All right, so sorry about that. For the better part of that contribution, we couldn't put the pictures on. It's because I had a little challenge with the framing of the speaker. I'm sure we'll get that right. We're able to reach out to him to correct the camera angle, and so we can get him in a better frame. But of course, we heard him loud and clear. I think his words were distinct enough, and it brings us to two things which I'd like the comrade DG, as someone referred to him now, to address. One of them is the matter of adequate remuneration. I don't know if it's a correct word to say adequate. Perhaps we should just say to find out how jobs can be well remunerated in Nigeria. And I'm looking at what kind of collaboration you can engage in with the International Labour Organization. That's on one leg. And then when we have addressed that, I'd also like us to see what can be recommended as proper remuneration, and of course the question of forced labor and child labor. But first, the collaboration with the ILO.
Well, I think first with the ILO, I think I've told you that our institute is actually modeled along the International Training Center in Turin. It is an arm of the ILO.
Okay, that's in the structure.
Yes, in the structure.
Now, in what's coming out of it, that
yes,
will ensure that
so we
jobs are well remunerated.
We have good active collaboration with the ILO to promote knowledge about collective bargaining process, because that's the tool that you need, that is available for the workers, for employers of labor as well as government, to get fair deal in the world of work. You need to negotiate. You don't get anything unless it's negotiated. Of course, you can get some few things through intimidation and harassment, whether on the part of the workers or the part of the government, but it won't be sustainable. I've had some comments that have been raised. There is a difference between, and I think I should underscore that, between memorandum of understanding as well as collective bargaining or collective agreement. Collective agreement is what you've negotiated and it becomes a reality in which it's duly signed for. And as Comrade Martin said, once you've gotten an agreement, all the parties must obey the agreement. And the DG of NECA also raised the point at the one day that, you know, all agreements are not sacrosanct. You may have what we call the opener clause, that in case things change, you know, for better, improve on what you've already granted before on the part of employers. If it's worse, things are going down, also you need to engage the workers and the unions. You can even do downward review. I've seen it in my experience in textile. You know, we've gone to, we use opener clause to improve on wages once inflation goes up, even though agreement has not expired. But we also use it to defend some industry from collapsing, to say, no, this rate we've got, it cannot be sustainable, because you have to choose between your pay and the jobs. And workers, I think Martin made the point, you can't even be members of union unless you're a worker first. Okay. And there won't be work for you if the enterprise has collapsed. So all I want to say here is that, and I think the DG NECA said as much, that what we need is more education. I think we are back to education. But education is also not cheap. Unions have really contributed to their union dues to do educational programs over the years. I know when I was in textile, I know much what you spent. I know what NSA has committed. I know TUC what is committing. Very quite significant out of the limited union dues. Employers have also sent workers for the sort of trainings. You know, government has also invested. You know, I mean, if in the case of federal government, you know, they also send workers to ILO for capacity building. We also know, you know, some of us have gone to NIPS, but that is not enough. So I want to say, Minals at 40, we like to make a case for what I call labor training fund. All right. A special fund to sustain that.
We'll ask you to pause there,
yes,
and to explain the full gamut of the labor fund, because we'd like to take this first call coming from Abdul Rashid, who's calling in from Kwara State. Hello, Abdul Rashid. Go ahead.
Go ahead, speak.
Hello. Good evening.
Yes, Abdul Rashid, go on, quick.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, yes, go on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Abdul Rashid, I'm calling from Kwara State. My question is, I want to thank you for the program. I'm Abdul Rashid, I'm working in the private sector.
Yes, we've heard you. Go ahead.
I'm tried by the labor union has been quite a long. But the issue in contention is that I've never seen a labor union that tried for tangible reasons other than their increment of salaries, which is what, even if government increase their minimum wage, they are going to take it back, maybe through removal of subsidy or something else that will still balance up for them to be asking for more increment of minimum wage, which at the end of the day, the private sector will be the one that will be suffering and looking for a way around. Some private sector will even fall because they will not be able to pay that certain amount of money, and their workers will be grumbling for increments too. And the price of goods in the market may also increase, affecting a lot of private individuals that are not working in the government sectors. As you can see, I've not seen a labor union that will be fighting for reductions of our economic values. How the minimum wage, the little amount they are earning, will be useful for them in the market. I'm looking for a labor union that will be fighting for the masses, not only for the increment of their minimum wage, but that will be fighting for people outside the government workers, especially for that will be looking at the economic of the country to project what will happen tomorrow. Not to be looking for an increment that will favor them as if the government is just going to blight them. If the government did not pay them their minimum wage, increase their minimum wage, they will go on strikes to affect a lot of youths that are coming.
All right.
I'm looking for a labor union that we know the value of the incoming generations. So all these things to be put in place before you embark on any meaningful strike or any meaningful. That is why the other man said talk about negotiation. All these negotiations will have to be taken in places before you ask for anything from the government.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Abdul Rashid from Kwara.
We need serious people, not only in the government sectors, but also among our leaders, our working forces.
Okay. Thank you, Abdul Rashid from Kwara. We're back here. Come with you. We're recommending a fund, and we asked you to pause at that point. Can you just explain this?
Yeah, I think what I mean about that is that it takes a lot of resources, to really promote proper labor education, as we're envisaging. That means labor education, not just on the part of the workers, but government officials, employers of labor, to know that labor matters, that labor disputes, even though they are inevitable, but they could be dysfunctional if they get out of hand. And the only way to do so is to make sure that you build capacity for the labor market actors to know how to handle grievances and even be conscious of some of the issues that are at stake. I mean, the last caller made the point that even though it's debatable, the workers are always concerned about their interests, and you keep on wondering, why would they not? I mean, everybody knows the number that wages have collapsed. And even government itself knows as much about that. I mean, that's why whatever you want to say is commendable that President Buhari just approved 40% increase in allowances for core civil service, which have been stagnant over the years. So everybody knows that. So if we know that we need to do something about compensation, you can't blame workers and unions that they demand for. Because in this market economy, you need money to pay your rent, to pay for transport, to pay for feeding of your children, and to pay school fees. So it's clear. But the point here should not be lost on us that all the parties cannot be looking at themselves alone. And I think NECA used that word, and I want to build on it. Talk of responsible enterprise. And I'm really excited about that. When employers are now talking to their members to know that we must be responsible. Make sure that you subscribe yourself to decent work, believe in culture of dialogue and co. I want organized labor too, unions. And here, I'm crossing between. I'm also said I would be happy to also hear from organized labor to say that we need constructive unionism.
Right.
And which will be developmentalist in orientation. We shouldn't have the impression that workplace is a warfare zone. It's not. It's a place to produce, to work, and get pay for the work done. So that also requires constant education back to it. I'm happy this government, especially the Minister of Labour, Dr. Chris Ngege, have been very active to bring back the National Labour Advisory Council, NLAC, because that's a tripartite body in which we could do more of engagement. And those are the areas that we must promote literacy, not just on core labor issues, but even about the economy, about the politics, the dynamics.
Okay.
And unions have to also know that we must be interested in what's going on in the economy. I mean, a big refinery will be commissioned very soon next week. I mean, the first in the continent. We shouldn't leave that alone to that investor. It's also in our interest because we are talking of direct jobs and indirect jobs of hundreds of thousands. So you need to find a way to make sure that kind of enterprise survives. Which means we must be clear about microeconomic issue, be concerned about industrialization, and again, these are discussions taking place at the right time because inauguration of the new government, I'm happy the president was very clear that he's committed to reindustrialization. Right. He also says committed to correct pay for the working people. In fact, he talks of living wage, he talks of decent work. Now, these are not me, which is meant for labor to cash on. And let me wrap on this note, Siri. I'm saying so with all authority because don't also forget that
under his campaign team, you know, President-elect Bola Asiwaju Ahmed, he was the only one who was a director strictly on labor, you know, of all the parties. He has a directorate on labor, in which Yos Komrele was a director. I mean, that takes that it's already at home. And the bottom line is for us to key to that agenda with open mind to make it possible.
That will provide the background for my next question to you. But first, let's take this call from Gabriel, who's calling in from Delta. Gabriel. All right. Okay. That call dropped. We lost that call. Responsible engagement. We'll come back to comrades about developing a roadmap for the incoming administration. But responsible engagement, it's also what you demand on the other side when you talk about fulfilling obligations.
I think you cannot have a responsible engagement.
Okay. Just hang on a while. Comrade Otoi from Kogi. Hello, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. I want to congratulate the institute.
Okay.
For getting up to 40 years and the DG. My own contribution is that I'm happy that they've been able to expand and also add value to the institution. And once it gets to degree awarding institution, that will encourage a lot of people. The problem we have in the country is that most people don't understand that education is very, very important. According to Abraham Lincoln, he said that if you think education is costly, try ignorance. It is not correct for us to now have an union without training them. Because if you don't train your union, they look at it that they can pull down the entire company or pull down the state. It is not only the union that has to be trained. The workforce and even the employer themselves need training. Because some employers have no rudiment of what trade union is all about. They don't even have the capacity of collective bargaining. So on the basis of this, training is very, very important. So that there is going to be peace and every other person will enjoy the workplace.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gabriel from Delta.
I also want to advise that government.
Okay, thank you so much, Gabriel from Delta. So let's return to Dr. Isiaku at this point. Yes.
Yeah, I think I was making the point about responsible engagement. You cannot have that meaningfully when you are engaging and negotiating from the position of ignorance. Mm-hmm. When you don't have much of the knowledge of the national labor laws. When your union leaders are not fully aware of their own rights and the right of the employer, which in this case is the government, where each right starts and stops. That is why you can always get this bad result of failure and signing of MOA, MOU, and then it will not be implemented and then back again. Even the followership, the union members, I mean the labor itself, labor members are not fully aware of their own rights. They are not fully aware of the contents and the spirits of the Trade Dispute Act, the Labor Union Act, and the rest of them, including the fundamental conventions of the ILO and the protocols. So you cannot really negotiate meaningfully if union leaders and their members are not fully aware of these rights. That is why we are having this recurrence of the problems. And we foresee more problems, unfortunately, coming in the way of the next administration. Because if you look at the manifesto of the incoming administration led by President-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we in Konwa have actually x-rayed it. And we have found that it is embedded with aspects of university autonomy, some aspects of students' loans, student scholarship. These things have been mentioned in the manifesto, but then it has not been defined. And you can bet that whenever they roll out these policies, the system will reject it, because it will now say that yes, the fact that university lecturers demand autonomy, but they will reject financial autonomy, because that now means passing the burden of funding universities to students that are already impoverished, whose parents are being paid low wages. So in Konwa, we have moved already some steps ahead to form committees that would look at these aspects so that we can define this set agenda that the new administration has already set, but it has not been defined. We are now working out the mechanisms where this aspect can be implemented so that we can be able to have a harmonious relationship between the tripartite members of the labor industry.
Okay, thank you. Comrade Martin, if you had the opportunity, because we're going to take the DG up on this, if you had the opportunity to set out a roadmap as far as labor issues and industrial harmony is concerned to the incoming administration, what would be your priority here?
Thank you so much. One of the basic things is the Ministry of Labor appointments into that ministry must reflect individuals who have understanding of labor issues, who are also well informed, or probably after appointment we have to go to Michael National for Labor Studies to undergo some training on labor matters. Very key. And I think from the organized labor, the demand for the next administration is that we should have one of our own to also be in charge of that ministry. With a lot of experiences on labor matters. Someone who has the theoretical and practical background of labor issues. And yes, I've studied the manifesto of Senator Bola Tinubu, and I've also looked at it vis-a-vis worker. In fact, the mention of decent work, because when you talk about decent work, is very key. One of the key components is that, one, there must be productive employment. Because the major challenge we have in this country is that we don't also have job evaluation to really look at how productive is our employment. So I think the challenge before this administration is also to ensure that we have productive employment. And then with the issue of respect for workers' rights, we must also ensure that we have independent trade unionism. But of course, the issue of constructive trade unionism should be a challenge also to the trade union movement, that we must engender constructive trade unionism. We must ensure that our rules of engagement follow international best practices. And that also takes us back to the institute. It's an institute some of us have benefited so much from. Having been the employment of this, and having undergone a lot of training, even my union, had also gone there for a lot of training. A lot of our members in the health sector who are professionals that have come to the institute, of course, to acquire knowledge. It's not about being a professor of any field, but you also have to be a professor of industrial relations in terms of theory and practice.
They need to be prepared.
Yes. So the challenge before this administration is that, number one, appointment into the labor ministry must be consciously done in a way that will reflect the background of those individuals that will man the ministry, knowledge of industrial relation in practice and in theory, because you must marry the two together. Okay, and then the issue of ensuring that there is an atmosphere for dialogue.
Okay.
Like the issue of National Labour Advisory Council, it must be well activated so that there will be also tripartite consultation. Like all these issues, fuel subsidy, I don't know, those are issues that should be, there should be a national discourse to look at it on the impact on the working people and the impact on the society. That is why the caller that said Labour is always concerned about their salary. No, I take exception, because Labour also look at the broader issues, economic issues and political issues of the society.
Right.
So I think the challenge before the coming administration is to ensure that there is a connection between our government and Labour to promote national development.
Right.
Thank you.
Back to the phones now. We have Ahmed from Zaria. Hello. Ahmed from Zaria.
Hello. Can you hear me, Mr. Soma?
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, I can hear you.
Yes. All right. I just want to make a little contribution to what my colleagues have said. I think there. You see, I don't know what is the problem of the executives and the labor, because the labor unions are trained and representatives of other people, while the government is the employee, is the employer of those trade unions. But if you look at the trend of what is happening in Nigeria in the context of administration today, the things are becoming unbecoming. And I'll give you 2 million. Let them try to 8 both of us. Alright? And at the same time, the individuals were fighting each other along the line. I don't understand. At the same time, the government is using its another tactic to divide the union. There should be something behind, because what I'm trying to say is some other states can copy the same thing. Some workers were sacked, the trade unions went on strike, and the state governor directed for the arrest of the union leaders. I don't understand. So I don't know whether it is the union that is not using the ethics, the lines of this institution, and I believe the scholars that sit down, they have been giving a lot of money to the union leaders, or they are corrupted, or it is the government that is using the same union to achieve what they wanted. So my contribution.
All right, Ahmed, I'll tell you what. Okay, thank you. Your sound has been fluctuating, and we could only get a bit of what you've been saying. Well, thank you for calling in all the same. Unfortunately, your sound kept fluctuating, but I guess you were able to push out the best of your ideas on tonight's discussion. We only have a few minutes left, so we'd like to take out the next few minutes to get the closing comments of our guests on Zoom. This time, let's reverse the order. Let's go to Comrade Abiodun Aremu quickly on Zoom to give us his closing comments, because we only have a few minutes left, and there's an important question for the comrade here before we close. Yes.
I think the only area I want to contribute now is more in the area of practical research engagement. And I think what we should try to do is how to document some of the basic national collective agreements that have been reached. Because each time you have issue of negotiations reoccurring, it's like a start all over again. I think there should be opportunity created whereby we can build on what has been done. Because if you look at, for instance, again, some of us can't stop calling back to the ASTO agreement. You get it? So there are matters of renegotiations. There are no matters, there are no fresh issues. And it is because of government failure in honoring those agreements that created that problem.
Okay.
You can also look at other unions at other levels, because each time when an agreement is betrayed, it leads into another round of negotiations. So I think the most important thing is that we must be able to prevail on government, to respect, agreements that are signed.
Okay.
Because we can't be renegotiating same agreement all the time. So it amounts to just waste of energy, waste of resources, and waste of everything.
All right.
So for the schools to make progress, or the institutions, we must also respect, our own law. So that's just the addition I don't speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Comrade Abiodun Aremu, Secretary, Joint Action Front and Coordinator of Milka Cabral Ideological School Movement. Thank you for your thoughts. Okay, bye now. Okay, let's go over to the DG NECA and quickly to get his closing comments in just a few minutes. DG NECA.
Thank you very much. Firstly, just to say Minals, happy 40 years once again, and we wish you fruitful and impactful existence in the next 40 years. To social partners, we as NECA, Labour and government, we have to continue to deepen social dialogue, we have to continue to deepen engagement, and we have to continue to deepen our collaboration. For the incoming government, I think that there is no two ways. They have to get it right at the first point of who heads what. Who heads the Ministry of Labour and Employment is very critical for us. I want to disagree with Comrade that said it has to be somebody from the Labour already have from Comrade, these are the new ministers. So you shouldn't have Labour person against the Ministry of Labour. But it has to be somebody that understands the basic understanding of industrial relations and that can coordinate, motivate, and mobilize consensus among social partners. That is the beginning, and we believe we will have started on a trajectory of growth if we get that right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. But if you do get one from Labour, it will be an added advantage, don't you think? But thank you all the same. Thank you, Mr. Aduwale Smart Oyerinde, Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA. Well, thank you for joining us on this discussion. Thank you. Right. Well, back to the studio here. Comrade, just a few minutes to go, and there are two things you addressed. What's the future of the Michael Imuru National Institute for Labour Studies in terms of just the next few years? And your long-term goals. That's key for us here. And well, when you have talked on that, we'll wrap up with the other one quickly.
Well, thank you so much, Cyril. I think as we are discussing, the president was already, it's implicit that we're already thinking of the future. The next 40 years, in fact, the next 100 years. I think it is clear we have to improve on the quantity as well as quality of our service deliveries. Our calendar for this year, 2023, we are running close to 60 courses. Both our implant as well as special programs that were put in place, and it's there in our calendar. So we are going to improve on that. Not only that, we're also looking at the changing world of work, the demographics. Of course, we'll be very strong on the core labor issues because those are the recurring issues. How do you handle dispute at work? How do you negotiate? How do you compromise? How do you exercise leadership? Absolute power corrupts absolutely, whether it's the power of employers or power of the government or the unions. Again, you need skills about leadership. You have to build consensus. Have to also appreciate productivity. It's not the body of employers alone, because if nothing is produced, nothing can be shared. So we are going to improve not only that, but we'll go further, because workers are also citizens. So they must have economic literacy, about core economic issues, microeconomics, fiscal, monetary policies, even democracy. We can't. The ability to know, you have to negotiate. We are not under military. Nothing can be gotten through fiat. You need to talk. You need to get compromises. That requires some level of education. Then special skills like computer appreciation, IT, there are not digital workers. Even to unionize them, you need to have the skills about technology. So we are putting that in place. So we improve on that. But the last 2 points I want to raise is that we are not just folding our hands, and I think we've started, but we are going to improve on it more. We've started before, but now we have escalated it, that there will be recognitions and award for the best labor practices among the employers of labor, government officials, as well as organized labor. And the key highlight of this celebration is that we give award to governors who have kept to take through their work very, very well. We recognize the Honorable Minister of Labor for their role, in promoting decent work. Of course, the President Muhammad Buhari for what he has done to labor. To put a comrade DG for the first time, it's not funny, but only they respect freedom of association, trade union rights. So I think for the new people coming, government elect, they should know that there will be rewards recognition for performance. And we're also going to have a roll call of not the best of practices. I don't want to say we name and shame them, but we definitely not recognize them.
You call them out.
Yeah, we will not recognize them. But in all this is to make sure that Nigeria, who have subscribed to ILO, conventions, and honestly speaking, we are not too bad, as you can see, if you check the record of the history of Minals. But if you look at the entire labor landscape, labor sector, one of the things I want to advise the incoming administration is that they should consolidate on the existing achievements, which are already in place. There have been robust engagement with labor to resolve disputes. We don't really bring this out. Ministry of Labor has apprehended, they've handled a couple of disputes, and amicably resolved. Judicial worker strike. It took the intervention of the ministry to get it done. Through negotiation. Those are the best practices we must recommend. The ministry has also insisted that each sector must have collective bargaining structures. So that minimum wage is just for the national. Below which nobody can pay. You can keep on doing regular negotiation. So the ministry too must. And just like in private sector, have negotiating structure that should be in place. So what I want to advise is that let's recognize the achievement that have been made, consolidate on them, and then we advance further. Whoever takes responsibility is about reward and the performance that we put in place. And why I'm so confident about the new dispensation is that when you look at the president-elect and people surrounding them, a good number of them are also from the labor movement. Comrade Adams Oshomole, is one of the key drivers of this agenda. The vice president-elect, is home and dry with labor, when he was a governor, even as a senator, and the real driver himself, which is the president-elect.
Okay.
He has a track record, as we have seen in Lagos. That was a place that wages have always been paid beyond ordinary. Lagos is the only one that has started with contributory scheme. At the time, many states have up to now have not joined since 2004. So if you have that set of people who know that labor matters, even during the campaign, they sat down with labor, took questions, and they were not palatable questions. I know NSCTUC put workers' agenda on the table, and I'm happy Kono and other unions are now scrutinizing the manifesto to know that no easy answer. Nobody gets anything unless you do direct social engagement. Right. And I think on that note, we can say Minals will prove its relevance more in this center. In this new dispensation.
All right.
And that's
It's
the way
on
to
that
go.
note we must
Yeah.
end this conversation. We'll hope to chip in one or two more, but we'll save the rest for some other time, as we've run out of time now. So I'd like to thank you very much. Comrade Isa Aremu, MNI, DG CEO Michael Emudu, National Institute for Labour Studies. We thank you for coming here, and congratulations, 40 years of
Thank you so much,
Minals.
you know, you are part of this celebration too. You're a worker like us. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Let me also say a big thank you to Dr. Aminu Abdullahi Isiaku, Head of Department of Geology and Mining, University of Abuja. He is the National Liaison Officer, Congress of University Academics, KONUA.
Thank you,
for being
Cyril.
here.
Thank you once again
Thank
for having
you.
me. Thank you.
And big thank you to Comrade Martin Banubi, General Secretary, Nigerian Union of Allied Health Professionals. We thank you for meeting
Thank you
us
so
tonight.
much. Thank you for having me.
Actually, before you, let me once again appreciate NTA,
right?
You know, for this platform. I mean, this story of 40 years couldn't have been made possible,
right,
without the regular coverage, of our activities at the state level, you know, and of course at the national level. And my special appreciation to the DG,
all right,
as well as your powerful staff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And so, thanks to you too for being part of this program. Next week we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Continue to stay safe.